How could a game which gets so many things right get so many other things wrong? And they're not really little things. Fundamental design flaws are rampant. There are problems with the story, the animation, collision and hitboxes, the pacing, so many other things. To begin with, I will give credit where it's due. They did indeed hit many things right on the head with Battlefield 3. One of those things was the actual feel of the weaponry. The detail on the models is terrific most of the time, the animations work well, the sound effects are some of the best I've experienced. One feature I really liked is that when you run a gun dry and then reload, you will have a full mag of say 30 rounds. However, if you reload before the clip is empty, you'll still have one more bullet chambered, so you'll have 31 rounds. The cutscenes also are really well done. I have a feeling that they're pre-rendered, but they don't really look it. They don't look too far out of place from the actual game, as say Deus Ex Human Revolution was. But if they run in real time, they're fairly impressive, running at an ultra-smooth 90 frames per second throughout the whole cutscene, with some very nice facial animation and some fairly impressive voice acting. The dialogue itself isn't that great, but it is portrayed so well that they can be a pleasure to watch. The voice acting in general was above average, and I really liked that when you body swapped into the Russian agent Dima, everyone was speaking in Russian. It was a nice touch to not have every person in the game speaking English in a game which jumps all over the world. They also varied their missions and levels fairly well, with you jumping into many different roles throughout the game, from straight up infantryman to fighter jet gunner to sniper to tank driver to covert agent. The jet mission is pretty memorable, even if the actual gameplay wasn't very exciting, and I liked how they did the extreme heights. In one instance you were skydiving from a plane, and as you jumped out you could look around and see land for miles. It wasn't very detailed, basically just a flat plane with a nice texture on it, but it was pretty cool to look around and see farmland off in the distance and such. As you fell, you went through a thick cloud layer, at which point they streamed in the real map, and by the time you got through the clouds you could see the actual terrain detail and models. It worked pretty well and gave you a good sense of falling a great distance. But despite doing so many things well, there were other things that just didn't make sense. Now, most of these down points are going to be based off playing it on PC, so I'm not sure if they're the same on consoles or not, but I'm assuming the models and effects are all the same, if not worse on a console, so it's also primarily aimed at the single player too. Point 1 is the lighting. For an apparently next-gen engine, the lighting was using the same technology that's been around for decades, basically plastering 2D sprites over all the light sources. Sure, the sprites are really well done, and they conform to a consistent theme of big, overly bright lighting, but don't tell me you've got a next-gen engine when you can't do light beams and flares as well as CryEngine 3 or even Unreal Engine. The lighting also failed at a number of design levels as well. There were multiple times when there was a great big overly bright spotlight with basically no fall-off, pointed straight at a door. Now, fair enough, I can forgive a light being there for an effect. But what I can't forgive is a fucking bright light coming from nowhere. Those spotlights had no source, no actual light bulb to be coming from. That is level design 101. Every light has to have a source. If they have a model of a big spotlight fallen over and pointed at a door, then it would be totally okay. But when you're being that obvious about the light, that light has to be coming from somewhere. Also, if you check out the light beams from any of the cars or any of the night missions, you'll notice that the lens flare sprites are put about a foot in front of the headlights, which is forgivable, but then you'll also notice that there is only a single spotlight coming from the car. 2 headlights, 2 sources of light, and yet only 1 beam? Sure, maybe some of this stuff only I get annoyed about, and I can see why they've done most of it, but I honestly expected more, considering how much they hyped the graphics and realism of the game. Speaking of realism, I get the impression that they really didn't know what game they wanted to make, so the pacing was quite schizophrenic at some points. Say, in an early mission, one of your buddies gets sniped, and there is a big halt in the mission to make sure he gets out safely. You and your squad mates make it to the rooftop, where you come under fire from the same sniper. You move slowly behind cover, 50 cal shells splintering various objects around you. It's tense. This guy feels dangerous, and you need to take him out before proceeding. A guy slides you an RPG, while somehow still keeping one on his back, and you launch up with your mates and destroy the fucker. It's a scene which works quite well, and it's the kind of stuff which separates Battlefield from the other first-person shooter games. and yet literally 10 minutes later, you're mowing down waves of enemies with an LMG while dodging rockets and grenades, waiting for the obligatory "okay, you can end the level now" objective. It just feels like they need to make up their mind. Either a single guy with a gun is dangerous, or you are an unstoppable murder god. You can't have it both in the same game. That mix between realism and action really does let the game down, in my opinion. The game is trying really hard to be Call of Duty 4, while at the same time trying to set itself apart from the Call of Duty franchise, and it just doesn't quite work. Speaking of the COD 4 features though, one thing they did very well was the first-person animation bits. COD 4 had a few parts where someone would help you up, or you would jump onto a helicopter or something, and it made it feel more physical and visceral because you could see your hands interacting with other people and objects. Battlefield took that idea and took it one step further, incorporating full body interaction. You were in the front row seat watching full first-person melee fights, your character jumping and climbing and otherwise interacting with the environment. They look really good and work quite well. Unfortunately, when I said watch, I did mean watch. Basically, they're QuickTime events, but you usually only have to push like 1 or 2 buttons in order to actually keep it going. The basic story of the game revolves around a group of soldiers in Iran who are after a terrorist leader. You play as Blackburn most of the time. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a first name, who seems to be the lowest ranking guy in the unit, and yet he's the guy who has to do everything. During the hunt, they find a case containing a nuke, and spaces for 2 others. It then becomes a hunt to find who supplied the nukes in the first place, and to find out where they might be headed. It's told in the past tense, with the Marine you're playing most of the time basically being interrogated. You get the impression that his character did something bad, and later it all alludes to you shooting a superior officer. Having played through most of the game, you're meant to understand that you're playing a good guy, and that you wouldn't kill an officer without a damn good reason. Near the end of the game, you swap into the body of Dima again as you store the villa of an arms dealer. Then once that mission is done, you play as Blackburn storming the same villa, but finding it already partially destroyed. And here's where the big reveal is happening. You feel it. Finally, the 2 characters you spent most of the time playing are going to meet each other, and you have a feeling it might not go well. And this is what we get. Dima basically telling Blackburn the entire story of the game, which we've already played through, and asking him to help stop the nukes going off. Then this happens.
Help me to do this. That's it, I have to leave now. You don't shoot him, millions will die.
Get down on the ground! I said get down on the ground!
Remember, do whatever you have to do to stop Solomon's plan.
That's right. Blackburn, the guy who we've been playing for most of the game, the guy who has risked his life on multiple occasions and who we understand to be an upright soldier who always follows his orders without question, shoots his commanding officer because a Russian agent told him to. What the fuck? Like, what? Cole wouldn't listen to reason? You couldn't just explain things to him as well? No? He has to die, and for no reason. Seriously? And then it jumps back to the cutscene with the interrogators saying basically exactly what I was saying at the time. So you admit to shooting your superior officer because a Russian told you to, and for no other reason. Are you serious? So, yeah, as I said, the voice acting is pretty good, but the story itself and the actual dialogue is just terrible sometimes. I won't go through all of the other points I had in detail, as I actually don't have the time, but I'll just show a few things that annoyed me. Fire apparently doesn't burn people in the Battlefield universe. Open faces on various models. Shoddy collision on various models. Sudden death for not being quick enough. No one shot me, I just died. Things despawning instantly. Threat of a war between America and Russia again. Guys, I thought we got over this. Garage doors opening into nothing. Weapons not deactivating during a few QuickTime sequences. And characters I have to protect not moving at all. Like, they look dead to me, but this guy is apparently talking into the ground, not moving a muscle. So how does a AAA title with hundreds of people working on it, and the full monetary support of a company like EA, fail this badly on so many basic things? I really wanted to like this game, and don't get me wrong, some of the vistas and scenery look amazing. But it's not good enough to make the big scenes epic and awe-inspiring, and then forget to focus on the smaller stuff, which we'll be seeing a lot more of. I just don't get it.